I think it was just a pass right here right now. This is actually moved. Stop. The idea would be to get here to here, and then.
Yeah, and I sent an email. Thank you for reminding me. I sent an email to the principal, and she hasn't replied back to me. So I'll remember what I said. Yeah.
Because right now, this is Mark Parker.
Yeah, that's Mark Park.
Yeah. Okay, I'll get something set up.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah, I did send an email to her, and I haven't heard back.
You're adding a little bit of mileage, so do you want to go this way? Some people go this way just because of Mrs. Hill.
Nope.
Yeah.
Do you want to do it before or after the
Like
meeting?
right now,
Well, I think we'd rather do it sooner rather than
Yeah.
later.
Okay. I told her this. Yeah, I told her this week.
Or the school meeting.
Yeah.
pile of debris back there.
That way we kind of know.
Granite
Yeah, yeah.
and slate.
Sure.
With it ripped out.
Let's call our work session to order.
You really can't. But this area's up for sale now on the market, so.
I don't know.
Somebody buys it.
All right. I'm glad so many of us could make it today. The first, there's two topics for today's work session. The first is the 19th Street, and then the second is the 2018 Street Maintenance Program. We'll start with the 19th Street project.
All right, good afternoon, commissioners and others that attended today. Dave Cronin, city engineer. We're going to go through today and provide the Transportation Commission some information and background on the history of the Harper to O'Connell reconstruction project on 19th Street, provide some information and get feedback. I know there's a lot of questions regarding the scope of the project and the timing, and right now it's scheduled as a 2019 CIP project. So we'll go through this and stop me if you have questions, commissioners, throughout the presentation. Be happy to try to answer those. So a little bit of background on 19th Street. From Iowa to O'Connell, it is currently designated as a minor arterial on our city's transportation plan. Currently, 19th Street dead ends at O'Connell. 19th Street east of Harper was originally constructed in 1959. It was constructed to more county road standards and not city street standards. It's a chip and seal road. It is narrow. There's no curb and gutter. There's open ditches. In our pavement condition index rating system, which is 0 to 100, it is very, very low at 24.8. It is in need of repairs and reconstruction. We've had numerous water line breaks, 9 since 2011 and 4 here this year. The corridor has sidewalk on portions of the north side, not all of it, and there's none on the south side. And just to note that this section is also designated for future bike lanes with our bikeway plan. Currently there's bike lanes for a significant portion of 19th Street west of Harper to O'Connell, or to Iowa, and we're including some bike lanes from on 19th Street from Iowa to Naismith with that reconstruction project next year to help connect the bikeway network. And so I'm going to back out here real quick, and I did pull up, just for those that don't go out there frequently, this is the current section of street. There's a lot of fatigue in the surface, and we've overlaid it into numerous patches, and it is pretty consistently in this bad of shape all the way to O'Connell. And I will jump forward towards the end, because we'll be talking about this in a minute. All right, let me close this. All right, so this section of street's been on our future thoroughfares plan to connect at some point. It was in the T2040 document. And with the semi-recent acquisition or development at Venture Park, which started back in 2010, we began to see the need to make the connection to O'Connell and to improve the condition of it. So, brief history on the Venture Park project. The city acquired about 450 acres back in 2010 to develop that land as a business park for primary jobs. Back in 2012, the city developed a master plan and held meetings with neighbors and businesses to discuss the master plan, and ultimately went through the plating process that would lay out the lots in the street network system for Venture Park. In 2013 and 14, the city invested $7.5 million on infrastructure out there for streets, water lines, sewers, sidewalks. With that project, O'Connell from 19th Street to Venture Park Drive was constructed. The cost was approximately $1.2 million. And at that time, when that was done and the infrastructure was complete, it was decided not to make the connection to 19th Street at O'Connell until that segment of roadway was improved because of the condition of it. So back then, we anticipated that we would have done that. We would do that in 2016. Obviously, that has been delayed, but that was the original plan. So currently, that at that point, 19th Street and O'Connell, there's a barricade. So there's a 50-foot gap of pavement between the original 19th Street and where it would tie into Venture Park there at O'Connell. And we can go back and look at the aerials here at the end. This is just the, I mentioned the plating. This is the master plan and the area of the street networks, the street network and the lots out at Venture Park. Down here is 23rd Street. We installed a traffic signal here at 23rd and O'Connell. This is O'Connell. It's been constructed up to 19th Street. And also with that infrastructure project, Venture Park Drive was constructed through the lot all the way to the East Hills Business Park. So all of this street infrastructure is currently in. Yes.
On lots 5 and 4, those are kind of seen as two separate lots. Is that, this is all city-owned property still, right?
It is all city-owned property.
So
Yeah.
could potentially be replatted for a single.
Could be replatted. The lots could be divided. They could be combined. It was just an original layout, the original plat to kind of designate the land and the major thoroughfares. So
It looks as if there's a road on just to the west. Was there a reason why the road network wasn't connected right there?
well, there is a road west of O'Connell that, and I'm going to pull out, Charlie, so everyone can kind of see this, but there is a road that connects to the frontage road that is out there. I'll pull up the aerial here. So when it was platted and the street was constructed, we terminated Venture Park Drive here just west of this frontage road that ties into the old frontage road on 23rd Street. The thought was that this area here could be, the lots could be combined in the future, and it may not be needed to extend this cul-de-sac all the way out as it's shown on the plat. So it was kind of, this is a temporary bulb out, depending on how this would develop. It may need to be extended here in the future, but there was no platting or right-of-way dedicated for any other connection west of this point.
What is west of that area?
This is the Douglas County Fairgrounds. This is a mobile home park, fire station.
Fire station.
So this is all owned by the county.
Thanks.
Back to the slides here. Any other questions on the street layout? Let me go back to, oops. All right, full screen. Okay, so when we were doing the master planning for Venture Park, we went through, city hired Bartlett and West to do a traffic impact study for the entire industrial park. With that traffic impact study, they assumed two scenarios. One was a 50% build out of the park and one was a full build out. And they simply took the industrial park trip generation numbers and method to estimate the amount of trips at full build out. So with industrial parks, it could be a situation where you have a lot of jobs, a lot of manufacturing, and a lot of trips, or it could be some of it could be more storage, warehouse, distribution type facilities that don't have as much trip generation. So in the industrial park zoning, there could be a variation, but we do think that this was a very conservative trip generation method, and until you begin developing the area and the parcels to what the uses will be, then you can kind of have a better understanding of what the trip generation would be in the future. So this was done back 5 years ago to see what improvements would be needed to the street network as this park developed. So in that study, some of the area intersections that were included were 19th and Harper, 23rd and O'Connell, K10 and East Hills Business Park, 23rd and O'Connell was included as well, and the interior street connections such as O'Connell and Venture Park Drive. With the traffic study, we do a procedure with trip distribution to see, making some assumptions on how trips are getting to and from the site. So with that study, it was assumed that 30% of the traffic would use 19th Street and 70% would use 23rd Street. And that 70% would be from the east and from the west of 23rd and O'Connell. And so generally that was the assumption that was made. I would say that one of the things that we should point out too is that 19th Street is not a truck route and would not be used as a truck route for trucks for this business park. That would be routed to 23rd Street, as 23rd Street's a major truck route. So, but what we would expect with this business park is that folks that are going to work at the business park would use 19th Street for access. Couple of other notes on the peak hour trips at the full build out on 19th Street. How much would it generate? In the AM it was 410 trips, in the PM it was 377. If you look at the total estimated trip volume, around 13,000 at full build out, that would generate approximately 3884 vehicles per day using those assumptions. And again, these were just assumptions that were made with that original traffic study. So with that study, there's also recommendations at these intersections that were studied. 19th and Harper currently operates a level of service A. Again, at intersections, it's kind of like your grades. It's A through F, and so A is obviously the best. So through that study and the trip generation numbers and the distribution, indicated that it would still operate at a level of service B at the full build out, and no geometric improvements would be necessary. Currently, it's an all-way stop, and in the future, it could remain as an all-way stop and still handle the capacity. 23rd and Harper, it was level of service C at 50% and 100%, which is acceptable for an intersection with a traffic signal, and there were no improvements recommended for that intersection. I would say the difference between the 50% and the 100% and the scenario that they did, the 50% scenario did not include the connection to 19th and O'Connell. So when the traffic study was done, it was done with the assumption that in the future it would be connected, and when the infrastructure plans and the project were being developed, we didn't know at that time if we had enough money to construct O'Connell all the way up to 19th Street, and it may needed to be in a future phase of construction. However, with the bids that we got for the infrastructure, there was sufficient funds to do the construction of 19th Street, of O'Connell up to 19th Street. So with the traffic study that we did, the 50% again did not include that connection, the 100% did. And so it didn't make any assumptions that if that connection wasn't made with the 100% build out, that this could be other impacts on the street network. Again, 23rd and O'Connell, a traffic signal was warranted through the study, and one was installed out there back in 2013. And I would note that when we did put in that traffic signal and geometric improvements at the intersection, that the eastbound left turn lane to Venture Park was constructed to the need of the traffic volume at the 50% build out. And that assumed that some of the traffic volume was using 19th Street. Some of the history of the planning and CIP process, again, we originally began planning to reconstruct 19th Street from Harper to O'Connell back in 2014. That was precipitated by the Venture Park development project and the condition of the street. At that time, we anticipated to do design in 2015 and move forward to construction in 2016. As the budget processes, we've gone through a couple of budget cycles. That project has been pushed back from year to year, and currently it is now included in the city's 2019 capital improvement plan. The current estimated cost is $3.65 million. That includes street, storm sewer, new water line, and everything that comes with a full reconstruction project. So it's just a ballpark estimate for budgeting purposes. So when we look to reconstruct streets in the community, we would try to follow our complete streets policy, which would include installing bike facilities if it's on the bikeway plan and sidewalks on both sides of the street, and looking at other multimodal improvements that we can make. And then I also would note that aside from the project next summer to reconstruct 19th Street from Iowa to Naismith, there's no other plans for additional projects on 19th Street throughout that whole corridor to increase capacity. So even the section of 19th Street that we've been reconstructing at 19th and Naismith and going forward next summer, we'll still have one lane each direction. The one difference through there is we're adding a center turn lane through there. So one of the questions that we've had about our transportation plan, and we've have shown this segment on our major thoroughfare plans in the past as a dashed line as a future street, is that we're currently going through a major update to our transportation plan. And so that effort is underway. Jessica with the MPO is here, and she'll be having some public meetings starting next week, November 13th to November 21st, where a draft will be released for public comment. One of the scenarios that we included with the travel demand model that is developed with that transportation plan was a scenario that included the 19th Street connection and a scenario that did not, so that we could look at the system as a whole to see if there was a significant difference in traffic volume projections with or without that connection. I would note that when we look at these travel demand models and scenarios, it's for the whole city. It's kind of more of a big picture model, and probably more geared toward making big projects that make significant differences, such as constructing the South Orange Traffic Way, or adding lanes to streets, or adding interchanges to highways. So usually that travel demand model is, and scenarios are used for kind of a big picture planning purposes. But we did include this in there to see what impact it would have with the model. And so that model is developed using what they have traffic area zones, analysis zones, that show where it's broken down to regions where people are going to destinations, whether it's businesses or schools or wherever they are or wherever they live, and those connections. And so that's something there's a lot of data. It outputs a map. We've looked at it. It's going to be publicly released here in the next week. From our preliminary data, looking at the travel demand models between the two different scenarios, there was not a change in the traffic volume on 19th Street west of Maple Lane. It did show an increase of 1,000 vehicles on 19th Street from Maple Lane to Harper. And when we're looking at these big picture models and numbers, they are all rounded to 1,000 vehicles. So it's the difference between 501 and 1,500 is still 1,000 in the planning purposes for this model.
Dave, could I, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
That's a key element to me, is what you just talked about. And I'm not sure I fully understand the 1,000. When would it occur? You know, and just, if you could run by that one more time, relative to 2040, what slice of time would that 1,000, would it be gradual? Would it be all at once?
Sure.
Yeah.
It's projected to the year 2040 if the improvements are or are not made to the system. So these different scenarios would include system-to-system connection with K10 and I-70, 4-lane SLT west of Iowa. And if you did not do that, this is the result of where traffic would be dispersed to. So if you don't do that improvement, how does that affect the street network, the adjacent street network? So it's basically a today scenario versus a 2040. And what improvements are we assuming we will make by 2040, and what will that impact be?
Okay, let me see if I understand that. So
Okay.
this is a big picture look at Lawrence, and it's reflected in this ADT from Maple Lane to Harper. How does that relate to the connection?
So let me say this. So when we run model scenarios for our plan update, right? We can choose what scenarios we want to run. But
Okay.
Many of the projects that are in the CIP do not make changes, even though they go reconstruct a road and they add multimodal amenities, or they do a turn lane. We don't model that level of stuff. So the only changes that projects that make changes to scenarios are ones where lane capacity has changed, right? So like even if David, like when they did 23rd and Iowa, it might have affected how the level of service impacted 23rd Street and Iowa, but our model's not sensitive enough to detect that. It's looking at a county-wide network where we put, here's what's coming in at the county edges, and here's what we think we're generating within our model within these traffic analysis zones to show where people need to go and map all of those trips on a network, right? And so it has some delays about how users will choose to make trips based on delay that they're experiencing in the network and other things. And so we look at base year, we look at if you, in 2040, if you do no transportation projects, but you just put all that extra volume that we project on the roadway by 2040, what will happen? And then we have whatever scenarios, like we have some different scenarios. So in the two scenarios that David's talking about in this situation, we're looking at a scenario where we have all the additional population, where we expect that additional trip making, but then we also ran a scenario where we show a connection at 19th Street and we don't show a connection at 19th Street. Of that, there is no change when you look at that west of Maple Lane. The volume that those roadways project that they will have are the same. Between Maple Lane and Harper, it only goes up 1,000. And then the difference between to put that connection in matches the traffic impact study of about 3,000 AAUT that it projects using that connection at 19 and O'Connell.
Okay,
Did that make more sense?
the last part of it did.
Okay.
The
Yeah, so-
theory behind it
So
didn't,
generally,
but
so part of the issue is I would have given David to use today to the model scenarios if I had. The reality is I have some fixes I'm working on with our consultant who does the modeling for us, and I'm not going to have those until tomorrow, the final stuff that we have to format to put out for next week for public engagement. So it's just a matter of timing. So I was trying to make some correlations about what we're seeing in the difference of scenarios. It supports the existing TIS work that has been done, but we urge you to use caution with using that in terms of those models, because there's a lot of assumptions we built into those models. So to try to make decisions about how you would do something, but design in the end is going to play a lot of role in how that ends up getting used, right? Because the more delay people experience, the less likely they are going to be to take that route, and so it won't show up in kind of in the volume. There's just a lot of assumptions in that. So to make a decision just purely based on the model, we would urge caution and say it's one piece of the picture, but there's a lot of additional other pieces that you have to understand when you're looking at what projects we're going to select by 2040.
yeah, I understand that. I think, for me to understand that without a connection, it's 1,000 vehicles or 1,000
No.
average.
With the connection, the section that exists, increase of that is 1,000.
Right.
There's no increase. There's an increase of 1,000, and then there's 3,000 that are using the connection. But part of it
That's
is
it.
traffic
That's the
analysis
part of it
zones
that
are building.
yeah, okay.
They're built into that. They're built into spatial areas, and they have to feed those trips onto the network. So depending on how the neighborhood trips feed onto the network, depending on where it's built, it shows that section of 19th Street already having like 5,000 trips a day, and then it jumps. It's like 10 or 11,000 after that. But so there is existing trip making there. That is how that network feeds into that part of that zone feeds into the network. Sorry, that's confusing. It would be a lot better if I could show you a picture, but I don't have a picture.
I know a lot more now than I did 3 minutes ago. Thank you.
Can I just clarify, didn't you say that the traffic impact study did not consider the O'Connell 19th connection?
It did with the 100% build out.
100% of it.
Yeah. So the 50% build out, it did not. So it looked at the level of service, 50% build out in that trip generation and not that connection and all the other intersections versus the 100%. It's there. These are the improvements that are needed. So even, going back to the 19th and Harper intersection, even at the 100%, it did not warrant improving that intersection from a four-way stop for capacity reasons.
So the 24-hour trip count of 3884 vehicles per day, that's the 30%.
That's 30% of the total 100% projected build out.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Was there consideration or was the assumption that there would not be any cut-through traffic, people trying to avoid 23rd Street?
With the traffic study?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Is that reasonable to expect no one would take 19th to avoid 23rd?
Well, we'll talk
I
about
think
that.
that's what the model looks at.
Yeah.
Because the model's routing trips from zone to zone where their origin and destination are, right? And it puts them on the grid, and it does this it does its work behind the scene to tell us how much delay somebody is going to experience based on the capacity of each roadway segment, and it makes people's routing choices, right, on a county-wide level, routing choices to show us what volume we should expect based on the capacity of the roadway. Then based on that, it outputs a level of service. And there's no level of service failures projected whether you build it or not. That there's additional capacity in.
Yeah, and I would also add that the traffic study used the 2012 numbers, which was pre-South Lawrence Traffic Way, and we're going to talk about how some of the numbers have changed post-South Lawrence Traffic Way, but it used those numbers and didn't assume any reduction in trips on 23rd Street after SLT was constructed. So another thing with the T2040 plan is that we have a major thoroughfares map that we use to classify streets and plan for future street extensions. And I think we've talked about this before, but the classification of streets, we go from major arterials, minor arterials, down to collectors, down to local residential streets. Currently, 19th Street is designated a minor arterial. There's the definition. We are recommending to redesignate that to a collector street, a major collector, with this major thoroughfares plan update. If I could go back to the GIS, the yellow line is collector street designation, so O'Connell is designated a collector street. The red is major arterial, that's 23rd. When staff was looking at this and the MPO planning team, if I can scroll over, felt that it made sense to reclassify that as a collector street. Currently, the plan is to we're tying in O'Connell. That would not extend to the east or to the north, so 19th Street ties into a collector street, the existing O'Connell. And then once you get back to Haskell, Haskell is a minor arterial street. So our recommendation was to reclassify 19th Street from Haskell to O'Connell as a collector street. Again, that map with that plan will be out for public comment here in the next week. Here's some more information on open house meetings. There's a link here. All this information will be posted on our Transportation Commission webpage. You'll be able to go visit that at any time in the future. Wanted to also talk about how traffic is changing with the South Lawrence Traffic Way. So KDOT gets citywide traffic counts in Lawrence every 3 years. The last 3-year count was the end of 2016 after the South Lawrence, the SLT was open. They've also since got additional counts in 2017 with their study of the corridor and the Westlake plan that they're working on. We've noticed through those traffic counts, the pre and post SLT traffic counts, that traffic volumes on 23rd Street have decreased 15 to 30%. Also, traffic volumes on 19th Street have decreased about 5% west of Naismith to over 20% east of Haskell. And that we've seen these east-west traffic numbers decrease on 23rd Street and 29th Street. We haven't seen any increase or decrease on north-south traffic, except for a slight increase on Haskell at 23rd Street. That could be due to the interchange there at 23rd at basically 31st and Haskell at the SLT, but there hasn't been any change on Naismith or on Mass Street at 21st Street. And I'm going to pull back here and show you kind of we put together this map that shows some of the averages. So what we did was, if you look on here, and again I'll get this posted on the web. We went through and got the three previous traffic counts, 7, 10, and 13, averaged them out, and then provided the 2016 after SLT count. So we've seen, again, significant decrease on 23rd Street. Out close to O'Connell, it's about 30% less. The average was over 30,000. Now it's down to 22. We've seen it decrease a little less as you go further to the west, and where we've gone from about 33,000 to 28,700, 33,000, 27,000 at Mass, and then even all the way to Iowa, where it's about 5,000 less. So a lot of that traffic that was using 23rd Street to go through Lawrence is now using the South Lawrence traffic way, and I think the volumes on that new segment are around 15,000, I want to say, vehicles per day. So we've seen significant decrease on 23rd Street, which is a good thing. I think, when we're looking at capacity, it's a function of the volume of traffic and the lanes that we have out there. So 23rd Street's a 4-lane street. Opening up some of the capacity on 23rd Street from the SLT is positive, because I think it's safe to assume that a lot of people were avoiding 23rd Street because of the congestion and using other streets, whether it's 29th or 21st, 27th, 31st, those side streets to go east-west. Also mentioned, we've seen a little bit of decrease on 19th Street. I think some of that, again, is just a spillover of the traffic volume decrease on 23rd Street that's been diverted to the South Lawrence traffic way. So again, this is just more information to help our decision making on proceeding with this project, or really any other project or plans that we have for street infrastructure and improvements in Lawrence. So wanted to note a few of the benefits to completing this project. Obviously, the street is in failing condition. It is beyond the point of routine maintenance. The water line needs to be replaced. So I think that is pretty evident. Providing another access point to Venture Park is important for safe, efficient access, so that folks that live in the community have access to Venture Park. Obviously, 23rd Street's still going to be the primary access point. And all the traffic from the east would use 23rd Street, but primarily the Lawrence community to the west and north would be able to use 19th Street to access Venture Park. The connectivity of bike lanes is important. Currently, O'Connell was reconstructed with bike lanes on O'Connell from 19th Street south to 31st Street, so this would make that connection with the bike lanes that are on 19th Street. Another note is that currently bus service doesn't use this route, where it's currently dead ending at east of Harper, so this is an opportunity to continue bus service for those that live on 19th Street east of Harper, and to also serve Venture Park and East Hills Business Park in the future. Wanted to note the need for the connections also important for emergency service. This was a question that when we were going through the budget cycle here earlier this summer, we had a question about the need of 19th Street, and one of the the other things that is important is emergency service and response times when the Venture Park area is developed. And so this was noted by Chief Bradford, the importance of having this connection for their ability to respond. Just a couple of other notes. I think connecting neighborhoods is also important. The neighborhood south of 23rd Street, this would connect through O'Connell to the neighborhoods along 19th Street, not just the bike lanes, but sidewalks as well. Wanted to point out the thing that we are always hear year to year is trying to improve east-west travel across Lawrence. And so that has consistently been a very high priority that we've seen through our citizen surveys. This last one was 2015. It was the #1 transportation issue. I think some of that has been alleviated with the South Lawrence Traffic Way, but still, as the city continues to grow and expand, and it's primarily expanding east to west, that is still going to continue to be something that we need to focus on. These are just the next steps. So today, this is, we've had a lot of questions from commissioners and from neighborhoods about the need for the project and the timing and the cost. Today, we're just providing you some information on on the street and the background. We would anticipate to have this on a regular agenda for the Transportation Commission early in 2018 to get feedback on design scope for the project. We would then take that recommendation to the City Commission before proceeding to design plans, if that is what the decision is. And then as we go through the design process, we'll engage the Transportation Commission throughout the design, receive public feedback. If we're going forward with our plan to reconstruct this in 2019 with the CIP, we would work on design plans through 2018, and work with utilities to do any relocations that are needed or right-of-way acquisition that could be needed at the end of 2018, so that we would be ready to construct the project in 2019. So that's just a very general timeline of kind of where we're at now and where we would need to go to get this constructed in 2019 if it remains in the CIP. I should also note, we have heard a lot of feedback from different neighborhoods that are concerned about additional traffic volumes on 19th Street. A lot of neighborhoods have kind of got together and formed a coalition to investigate this need to see if it's needed, and so we're here to get feedback, like always, on concerns and see if there's other information that we can present or provide so that we can all make informed decisions on how to proceed with this project. That is all that I had, and if there's any other questions, be happy to try to answer them.
Dave, is there any kind of traffic calming in the works or plans, or are you to that point yet where you know?
We're not to the point of deciding what or where traffic calming could be installed. That's a question that has come up, and I would recommend us, if we proceed with the project, to do that through the design, get some speed data, new traffic counts to see where that may be appropriate.
So do it after it's constructed?
No.
Oh, okay.
It could be done in conjunction with the design process. Sometimes it's better to wait and see how traffic patterns change. I'm not saying I would recommend that. It needs to be part. I think traffic calming can be part of the discussion for the project. Particularly with redesignating 19th Street to a collector east of Haskell. Even through that designation, we're kind of saying, hey, this is more of it's not a arterial street, it's more of a collector street. It's got homes that front the street with driveways, which makes it more of a candidate for traffic calming. As you get further to the west and you have the higher traffic volumes, particularly close to KU, the volumes are so high that traffic calming might not be effective, because in a peak hour there's so much volume on 19th Street already that the traffic calming wouldn't reduce speeds a lot because it's currently reduced by the amount of traffic.
This is the data, Jessica, that you have, you mentioned the modeling software you're using. Is there a point where that will be ready for us to take a closer look at it?
Yeah, Monday, when we put out all of the stuff for public engagement, we'll have all of our model scenarios drafted. In terms of like an image I can show you with all of the volumes, and you'd be able to use it at any point after that point when it's made public and we have a final result from the consultant. I literally don't have it, so I can't.
But it'll show us each scenario.
Mhm.
Okay. I think that could be really helpful.
I mean, I would just
This is
really
a lot of
caution you, this is
information.
really regional, it's regional, so it's like,
Right.
regardless of the fact, you can do that, you can look at it, but don't use it as the sole basis for your decision making. And it really can not, you still need to decide what design you do and how that functions based on the classification. But, yeah, we'll look at all the scenarios.
Is that model
There's
something
no
that,
level of service failure, so all you're gonna see is literally the difference in 3,000 trips on a line. For the section of that connection, it'll increase a small section 1,000 trips, and then there's no other change.
Would it help if there was like a 5-10 minute presentation on what a model is?
I think it could. I really think we have
Just the
to
basics.
try to squeeze everything.
This is a
into,
TAZ,
our time
this is a
frame and
node,
stuff,
this is sort of,
so.
just the
I just
planning
caution that
001.
you can do additional modeling that's corridor specific modeling, that exists. That's not what this is though. So this is looking at how does the entire network, based on how the roads are classified and how many lanes are on them, how much capacity does it have? And then it uses the origins and destinations of trip generation to put those trips on the model based on the capacity that we say is there because of the network attributes to say, here's how the volume is gonna look like.
I think for people with no engineering or planning background,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, I get it, yes.
just a
Yeah.
5-minute picture and the very basic of,
Well, perhaps even a simpler question and maybe more immediate. You could try to crystal ball how Venture Park is going to develop, how, when, where, and people would be optimistic because of all the investment the city's made out there. But I doubt if anybody could say that, it's, how you would project that. So, not to be negative or not optimistic about it, because I would like that investment to be positive. If it developed slowly, and much like it has in the last few years, and the connection were made without anything developing out there at all, let's just say, hey, maybe it won't develop like we'd like it to. With the connection, what would be the immediate impact on 19th Street? Regardless of the model, I agree. I think we need to know
we
more.
don't do that, so
I'm
how
really
does
curious
model-
about that big
We don't
model.
have that, so I'm not going to be able to tell you that. And our model already makes assumptions about what we're projecting to happen with land use in terms of residential development, where those are going to be, and then also it makes assumptions about what we think is going to happen with employment. And so those are two things where the model is only one assumption of an outcome.
Well,
It is
I'm
not
looking,
all.
I'm not looking for a scientific basis for the question I just asked.
Yeah.
It's more of a common sense, what do you think? You guys know more about this than we do, but what does your gut tell you about what may occur? And not only how Venture Park could develop, but who's going to work there and where are they going to come from? Are they coming from Lenexa? Are they coming from Eudora? Are they coming from Lecompton or Barker? And I know this is all crystal ball, but at some point the science, I don't think, serves as well as somebody's gut instinct on what the heck's going to happen there and how is it going to affect, the short-term aspects of this. I think people are more worried about, what this means in the next 2, 3, 4 years to their neighborhoods and to the city. I really appreciate the big picture model. I'd really like to know more about that because I think that has as much validity to really, making a decision about 19th Street as this macro level might. So I think both things
Mhm.
would enter into my mind in thinking about this over the next 6 months.
Yeah, and I would say to that, Steve, that there is, some of it is gut or perception, not just the science and numbers, because if you look at the current street network now, so, I mean, it would be determining how many people are currently using Harper and Haskell to cut through on 19th Street, which we
Yeah.
can't really answer. I think there are people that use it. I mean, it's, you know, East Lawrence is more of a grid street network, so people use different routes to get from east side of town to downtown or to campus. So obviously, east of Harper, the traffic volume would increase because some people will use O'Connell to get to 19th Street and cut through. But how many of those people are currently using Harper or currently using Haskell? That, you know, we can't really
Yeah.
say specifically how many people are cutting through and what's the definition of cutting through. If you're going from 23rd and O'Connell to KU, you need to use one of these streets at some point to get there. Haskell is a minor arterial also. You've got Mass Street and Naismith, and there's only so many streets. None of them are major arterial streets. So some of it is interpreting the situation in the street network. There's no additional, extension of 19th Street east of O'Connell or no other trip generators that exist out there now.
Mhm.
So it would just be folks that would go up O'Connell and then down 19th Street that currently could be using Harper or Haskell. So that's why I think when you get to Haskell, in my professional opinion, that's when you start to would see the cut-through traffic not change with this connection as much because they're already using Harper or Haskell to get to 19th Street and then use 19th Street. But
I understand that.
again,
Yeah.
how do you study that or quantify it's, unless you have a GPS on everyone's car and know where they're going,
Well, I mean,
it's hard
that is
to
the-
know, but
There's big brother issues about it.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
you can do it, you can put up a GPS sensor at one end or the other, and it tracks Bluetooth signals, and you just match them up if they went through versus if they
Mhm.
stopped in between.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a good question, a great question. It's just,
Well, the last thing, and I'm going to let other people talk, or maybe the public, but do we have any traffic counts on 19th east of Haskell?
we do.
We
East
do.
Haskell.
Did I miss that? Is that in this data?
We just revised that this morning, so you don't have that.
Okay.
It is, that is right here on the map. So, and I'll send this out to everyone and post it. These, again, are the last 3 counts
Okay.
before the SLT count in 2016. So I averaged the numbers.
Oh, I see, yeah. Do you have anything east of Harper?
We do not east of
Okay.
Harper.
Okay.
It would be,
It's a dead end.
it would be minimal. It would just be this, it'd be the local traffic.
Well, I know,
So
but
we do have just
that's what we're
west,
talking about may change.
that would change. Yeah,
That would change,
absolutely.
You know,
Harper to O'Connell absolutely would
and I think
increase
maybe
because-
that's where I'm going. What's the gut
But-
feel about
But
that?
west of Harper, we have a count, so, currently 23rd Street, Harper's connects 23rd and 19th Street, so
Okay.
people
Okay.
use that. The other thing, it's again, just the planning and looking at the network. If you don't make the connection and the folks that are using 19th Street get to Harper, then they go down Harper to 23rd Street. Harper it also is a collector street. There's a school on the street. There's a school zone on the street, 21st. So you have to think about this. Where do you want traffic volume to be? We're going to have traffic volume. Do you want it on 19th or do you want it,
One thing I
you
point out,
push it to other streets?
when you're looking, if you're looking at 19th from Harper to O'Connell, that's not the same as when you're looking a little bit west of there. There's not a lot of frontage driveways right there, are there?
On
Am I looking at
Harper?
that right?
Between Harper and O'Connell?
Yeah, that looks like, that's platted out with little cul-de-sacs.
Yeah, I don't think there is much.
Yeah,
So if you're wondering about, okay, increasing traffic volume affecting people pulling out of drive, I don't think you have that right now.
I wasn't necessarily thinking about that, but I will say that I'm glad I don't have to decide anything today. And I think this information, Dave, is great. I mean, this asks us to ask a lot of questions. And I think that this is excellent, you know, in terms of providing the information for us.
Dave, take the 18th, the street maintenance plan, is that something we can put on our regular agenda for the staff presentation in December? Okay.
We have a half hour left, so,
Well,
yeah,
I
then
think-
it's, yeah,
I'm
we
looking
should,
at the number of people here, and I assume you're all here to speak about this issue, is that correct? How many of you are planning to speak? 1, 2, 3, maybe?
Behind you.
More, so, I actually didn't read, but I think this has been a topic that the public has continuously come back to us and asked us to address, and I kind of feel like we're not going to probably learn enough today, so we have to just be patient and listen and hear the public out, and then kind of come up with another plan to do more discussion. If that works for everybody. So, are you going to be able to take the rest of it?
Yeah.
Do you mind, like, just giving the public a chance to say their piece? And-
Yep.
All right. Thanks.
yeah,
All right.
yep, we'll do the street maintenance plan at the December meeting, regular June meeting.
All right, any other commission questions for staff? With that, we'll open it up to public comment. Is there that sign-in sheet? Is that still floating around? Can we put that up there?
I think everybody would
Okay.
Okay.
Chris.
All right, sorry, I'm short. I don't like.
You can adjust those two.
Oh, good. That's what I have to do in my classroom at KU. All right, can you all see me? Hi, my name is Ali Phillips. I live at 1728 Mississippi in the University Place neighborhood. I'm an accountant by nature. I'm on the KU accounting faculty, and I'm data-driven by nature. My brain's wired that way. I use data every day to solve business problems. But in this case, I'm urging you to appeal to your sense of common sense. And common sense says that if you open the connection at 19th and O'Connell, traffic westbound on 19th Street will increase. It will increase all along the route, including west of Maple Lane. There's no way that is not true. West of Maple Lane, traffic will increase all the way west toward KU. Data models have a lot of inherent flaws, as evidenced by all the discussion that we had today. These data models, as Steve pointed out, don't know where traffic is even coming from for the people who will occupy Venture Park. These data models don't consider KU game day traffic, Kansas City commuters like half my colleagues that drive K10 every day to get to work at the School of Business and cut through on 19th Street as early as they can. So I urge you to appeal to your sense of common sense and try to help us keep any increase in traffic off of 19th Street. I feel like Lawrence is an amazing place to live because of all the diverse communities that we have throughout the city. And I feel like it's in the city's best interest and your best interest to protect the vibrant neighborhood communities that we have. There's a lot of those vibrant neighborhood communities along 19th Street. In many ways, 19th Street is very similar to 21st Street in terms of width, in terms of houses all along the street, clear up to the curbs, driveways where cars are exiting, entering, kids on traffic, 2 schools directly on the road, Kennedy Close. Kids are on traffic every day, including on foot every day, including my kids that cross our neighborhood to get to Lawrence High School. Increased traffic on 19th Street impacts the safety of our residents and the livability of our neighborhoods that make 19th Street make Lawrence so special. You know, Dave's presentation talked about things that are important, that the connection at 19th and O'Connell allows for emergency vehicle access, allows for buses, for bike lanes, for traffic. The 19th Street Coalition wants a lot of the same things the city does. You know, we're in favor of a new paved street from 19th to Harper, sidewalks. The kids at Kennedy deserve a sidewalk there, bike lanes. All those things that the city thinks are important, we think are important too. We're just saying there's alternatives. There's middle ground to get those things that the city thinks are important without opening up 19th Street to additional traffic. One option, and I'll let some other people speak to this more, but one option is considering a gate at 19th and O'Connell, just like the one on the KU campus right by the Watson Library. A gate that every city bus in Lawrence could have a transponder on that would automatically open as you got close. Fire trucks could have it. All the T buses could have it. It could be a gate that would allow people to go east and west to that connection that need to, but would not allow cars to enter from the east and head westbound. That's one example of an alternative that meets the needs of the city, but doesn't negatively impact the residents that live on that street. So I'd just like you to think more broadly than the data represents, and think about out-of-the-box solutions so that we can all continue to live in a community that we love and is safe for our neighborhoods and vibrant and has that sense of livability for all of us. Thank you.
Any questions for the speaker? Seeing none. I'm going to ask that the public please hold your comments to 5 minutes so we can kind of keep this moving and get out of here by 1:30. Thank you.
You're welcome. My name is Jesse Brinson. I actually live just north of 19th and Harper, and so my kids attend Kennedy, one of the schools she mentioned. And I second everything that she said. And so my wife and I's particular interest would be what that traffic calming look like and the safe routes would look like. Forgive me, I forgot, I was reading a stat that Kennedy kids are the lowest walk, bike attendees among all the schools in Lawrence. And so after reading that, which was a couple of days ago, I imagine what increased traffic would look like even more. You know, knowing that was one thing that we were trying to push. We do a semester day, you know, where we encourage kids to walk or bike or to school, you know, to obviously increase their exercise. So that's something we would, you know, like to see kids doing more. With that said, you know, my wife and I discussed this, and it would become harder for us to allow our kids to walk to school, knowing that the route we continue through 19th all the way to O'Connell. So thank you guys for your time in doing this, but that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the speaker? None? Thank you. Next speaker.
Bonnie Uffman, I live in the Barker neighborhood. This whole topic is upsetting to me. I have dealt with this, I have appeared before the City Commission and addressed this on numerous occasions. I can't count how many it's been. And it's always pushed to the side, okay, we're not going to do this now, but it never dies. And I don't know what it takes to make that happen. To me, this whole thing is an invitation to more traffic through the neighborhood. And as I said, I live in the neighborhood. I consider it a residential neighborhood. And when I hear about, to me, what is a residential street, and we're talking arterial, major collective, we're going through neighborhoods where cars are getting in and out, and they can, you know, it's a really narrow street for what we have right now. And I'm hearing that that's not going to change. It would be impossible, really, to change it. But to invite more traffic in and say, well, then we'll invite it in and calm them down, I mean, that just does not make sense to me. Public feedback is that virtually no one in the neighborhoods wants this. In the coalition, there are 5 different neighborhoods who are opposed to this. In my neighborhood, it was virtually 100% said, we do not want this to happen. It feels like a nightmare waiting to happen. I see just so many drawbacks to this, and I can listen for an hour. I do not hear a convincing need why this has to be opened up. I can understand why O'Connell to Harper needs improvements. Go for it, do it. But to do it to such an absurd degree that it invites so much more traffic into all of the rest of the neighborhoods just, to me, doesn't make common sense. And that's not even thinking about the cost. This is a huge amount of money, which from my point of view, we're throwing away when there are just so many more ways in which this could be used. Safety is a really big concern. And when we're talking about schools along the neighborhood, it's pretty scary bicycling along 19th right now. Think about inviting in more vehicles, and it would be absurd to think about biking through there. It's scary now, as I see it. And I don't ride on 19th Street on my bike right now. I ride on the sidewalk. I don't want to risk my life in that way. And I think this just makes it increasingly dangerous. And as I said, it upsets me that this keeps coming up over and over and over, and it never dies. In spite of the fact that there's no one in the park we're trying to connect it to, as I understand it, it just seems absurd to me. So I guess it comes down to, for me, and my concern is about the livability. I want the neighborhoods all along there to be places where families can be comfortable living, and that all the congestion doesn't head our way. And what it looks like is that's what will be happening if this is opened up. And as Ali mentioned, there is an alternative, so that's safety. Fire vehicles can get through. That doesn't mean we have to open it up for everybody to come through. Thank you.
Any questions for the speaker? Seeing none, next speaker. Anybody else would like to speak?
My name is Pat Cady. I live in the Barker neighborhood as well. Two issues that were brought up on, I think it was the last slide that you showed, about reasons to have this connection put through. One of the reasons given by Dave was you would connect to neighborhoods south of 23rd Street. And that was very puzzling to me because in addition to the traffic, so-called traffic generated from Venture Park, you're now talking about somehow encouraging people who live south of 23rd Street to access the city by coming through O'Connell Road and down 19th Street. Yet again, more traffic on 19th. I deplore that notion. 23rd Street, as you've pointed out, is less traffic now with the South Lawrence Traffic Way, and is it's a major arterial, and it should be the way that people get from south of 23rd Street west and north. And the other thing that was on that slide was improve east-west travel, that this connection would somehow improve east-west travel. Here again, a very obvious ploy to pour more traffic onto 19th Street. So I just would reiterate what Ali said. We are thinking of other ways to solve the dilemma of Venture Park alone, not to solve east-west traffic all across the city, focusing on 19th. But think about that, the idea of the gate and the transponder. It works really well at KU. It could work very well there. And there are other ideas that we have that are trying to meet some sort of, meet the city at least part of the way. Thank you very much.
Any questions for the speaker? Next.
Where do I plug this in? But there used to be one right here.
Okay. How many other people would like to speak on this issue?
Does it automatically come up?
One more? Okay. Just making sure.
open it. Please click on that, double click. Okay.
Hi, I'm Michael Allman, Brook Creek neighborhood, member of the 19th Street Neighborhoods Coalition. If you understand this slide, there's probably very little else I need to say. We don't want any more traffic on all of 19th Street, and we don't want to widen 19th east of Harper. That's pretty much the bottom line. And before I get going into the rest of the slides, there's a fundamental difference you need to understand between our perspective and the city's perspective on how to find solutions. The city engages in traffic demand modeling, which is I think of as free-range vehicles, free-range cars. Cars going every which way that anybody wants to, and then we just deal with it. Increase streets, whatever it takes to handle it. Transportation demand management, on the other hand, what many communities around the country do, says we have so much potential traffic, how do we manage and control it to go where we want it to go? Okay? Major fundamental difference. Our perspective is let's manage it, let's keep it off of 19th Street, put it on 23rd Street. So that's kind of the basics there. It's a residential street, narrow right-of-way, narrow pavement, narrow lanes, 50-foot right-of-way there at 19th and Main. Other areas are 60 feet or 65 feet. Residential street. Traffic counts, you asked about traffic counts earlier. 3,840. They're just west of Harper. And these are collector level counts. But that street is, like I said, 11-foot wide lanes. It can't handle any more traffic unless we do something to the street. And the city has maintained continuously, and you heard it today, no plans to widen 19th Street west of Harper. That could be a problem, a big problem. East of Harper, it's even smaller. 22-foot wide residential width, crown and ditch contour, asphalt material. It serves only 212 homes, a salvage yard, a church, and the animal shelter. That's it. There's less than 1,000 vehicles a day on that. It's a dead-end street. We want it to stay at 1,000 vehicles a day. These conditions of themselves don't warrant a $3.625 million project, which is what is in the CIP right now, if you look it up. So 19th Street is getting squeezed from both ends. That's what's happening. Major traffic generator in the west, nothing we can do about it. Kansas decided to do it. We have to handle it somehow. However, in the east end, this traffic generator, we have say over it. Lawrence can decide what we want to do and how to do it. It's all in our control. We don't have to build a 47-foot wide street. The only rationale for doing that is to enhance Venture Business Park. It's not going to serve our neighborhoods. It's not going to serve any of our neighborhoods. It's going to impact our neighborhoods negatively. They say they need a third employee access. They say they need water lines, drainage, better drainage, more sidewalks, add bikeways. They say the low PCI prohibits simply build and overlay, so they have to totally rebuild the street. And they say they need transit service through there and need emergency vehicles access. The last two we recognize as valid, and we're working with that, and the solutions we're coming up with address that. The first three we do not agree with. The PCI, Pavement Condition Index. 2009, the PCI of that street was 49.6. See it on that yellow line there? 49.60. Continuously through the years, it stayed at 49.6 PCI. All of a sudden, this year, it drops to 24.8. Physically speaking, that's not possible. The pictures you saw, if you drive out to East 19th, you look at the street, The pictures you saw were highly enhanced. Every little crack showed. There are 3 sections on that street that the subbase is deteriorated, could be repaired. A simple mill and overlay, 22 feet wide. Venture Business Park, those, like somebody mentioned earlier, those employees, actually Commissioner Evans mentioned, those employees aren't necessarily going to come from my neighborhood that have to come over 19th Street. They're going to come from all over the place. They can go on 23rd Street. 23rd and Franklin Road is already platted and was listed in the original plan as a key component to the viability of Venture Business Park. That photo is from the original plan. They're touting 23rd Street. It's right on 23rd Street. It fronts on 23rd Street. We got figures from KDOT. These figures, and I'm going to pass these around to you. Everybody can take a copy of this if you want. These are recent figures from KDOT. Indeed, the SLT opening has made the traffic counts on 23rd drops precipitously. The west end, around Iowa Street dropped 4,310 vehicles lower. Around Massachusetts, 5,040 vehicles lower count. And at O'Connell Road, the traffic count has dropped 8,820 vehicles a day. That's 21%. The city's projecting 15 to 30%. If we go to 30%, it's going to be some 10 or 11,000. They're saying there'll be 12,000, 13,000 new vehicles from Venture Business Park. 23rd Street can handle that. We have the capacity. It's there. It's a 4-lane principal arterial. That's where that traffic should be. So there are other options. Water lines all over town are routinely upgraded without rebuilding the street. Happens in my neighborhood, happens in your neighborhood, everywhere. Don't have to totally rebuild a 47-foot wide street to fix the water lines. Same with sidewalks. We'd welcome sidewalks. We'd welcome a shared use path. And there's a historical memorandum of understanding with our neighborhood, and I believe Barker for streets like Leonard, North Lawrence, all over, that we want to retain those open ditches. The presentation earlier portrayed those open ditches as a negative. No, excuse me, we want them. They carry much more water in flood-prone areas. We don't want them covered over. That's not a reason to rebuild the street. Traffic calming reduces speeds. It doesn't cut down the numbers. Open that street, widen it. You saw the numbers are going to shoot up. So we propose a gate operated by transponder for emergency vehicles and buses. So what we would like to see is mill and overlay 19.
You're at about 8 minutes right now. Out of the respect of the other speaker, how much longer do you have?
A couple more slides.
Can you finish it up in 2 minutes?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, Mr. Cronin took 50 minutes, so I appreciate it. We would like to see you mill and overlay 19th at 22 feet. There's 19th Street. I have several photographs. That center lower area is a degraded area that's crumbling. The rest of the street looks fine. It can be repaved, milled, and overlaid. You can repair that subgrade in a few spots. Just did that along Haskell. Install new water lines. Yes. Install a sidewalk. Install a shared use path. Please do. But install a barrier gate at O'Connell, opened by transponders. Put a $1 million roundabout, maybe even less, at 23rd and Franklin Road. Keep all the Venture Business Park traffic on 23rd. And in the long run, save $1 million. It's a lot cheaper to do that and do a gate than a $250,000 signal at Harper or a roundabout at Harper and 19th. The gate would be a lot cheaper. Mill and overlay, a lot cheaper than 10-inch thick, 47-foot wide concrete. A lot cheaper. So this is what we like you to go away with. Why build a huge street and then try to calm it? What a waste of money, what a waste of resources. These are the neighborhoods that are all part of our coalition. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Michael? Thank you, Michael. Next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate all the work that all of you have done. And Michael, thank you for how carefully you've prepared all of this over a number of years. Really appreciate it. My comments are very short. It basically deals with livability. You've had a lot of information. I'm not an expert on how you build roads or where you put your ditches or whatever. What I do believe in very firmly, and I know a lot of you, if not all of you, believe too, is that it's really important to protect a livable, good urban core residential areas. And we have several in our coalition. This is an opportunity to make a difference, to make some choices that make us all a stronger community, the whole Lawrence community, because what happens to our communities and the safety of our communities and the health of our communities and the livability impacts Lawrence. So every community we can protect by providing safe transportation, safe access, which for me means no increase on 19th. If you look at all the data, you know that that's the case already. We've got big problems with that. We know that neighbors do not cross streets that are busy, which impacts the compatibility among neighborhoods. We know they do not walk their kids to school. They're driving them because it doesn't seem safe. They don't want to walk close to the edge of streets that are busy. And if you've been around Lawrence High School, which I have many, many times, from 7 in the morning until 10 at night, if not later, it is really difficult to maintain safety with all those adolescents, all their parents, and all that's happening around the activities in that school. So for me, protecting an urban core, livability for people who want to come and bring their families there and live there and be a part of this community is very, very important. And that would be my point in encouraging you to not do any kind of action that would increase traffic on 19th. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for the speaker? Seeing none. One last check. Anybody else like to speak on the subject? Seeing none. Bring it back to the commission. Any other questions for staff?
I don't have a question, I do have a comment. I did turn into a request in Ron's direction. Given the coalition, the width of the coalition extending to Lawrence High and Cordley and some of the other schools, maybe not directly on 19th, I think it would be nice to hear from the schools about this. I think I would request that you talk to the folks at Lawrence High, the folks at Cordley, and if nothing else, make them aware of what's going on here. You know, I think a lot of things we can get into trouble with are just not being informative. And I think it's really important to bring them into this conversation and get their feedback. And we have a school board, USD 497 person on our commission, I think, for that reason. So we have plenty of time, and I'd really like to request that we follow up on that.
Does that work?
Yeah, and that would include Kennedy Elementary, obviously, out there, close to where we're talking about it now, just to
Right.
communicate with them.
One thing I would bring up, and I know Charlie, I, and Steve went out spent a couple hours with Steve Lashley going out and looking at different pavement sections and talking about PCI and all this other stuff. Steve, you can confirm this, but the city doesn't do all the streets in town every year. There's kind of a rotational basis that you guys go out and grade the streets.
So 25% a year.
Okay.
Everything, so it's usually over a period of time, so we actually see those long-term kind of changes and stuff.
Right. So just because it just didn't change in a couple of years doesn't mean it wasn't degrading or at any one point. Those are snapshots that take place over multiple years, rotations, so just as a, bringing that up. Dave, do you have any other issues? I mean, we're a couple minutes before the time limit. If there's no other questions, I'm gonna close the study session. Thanks everybody for coming.
I will. You gotta get your credit.
I know, I want to make sure everyone knows I was here.